Hey guys, tonight we journey to the Ethiopian highlands, not through highways or time machines, but by sinking gently into the soft folds of history. You're stepping into a quiet village tucked among the Simeon Mountains, sometime in the medieval era, when daily life unfolded at the pace of weather and prayer. The air smells faintly of smoke and cardamom, cattle low in the distance, and somewhere a rooster seems confused about the hour. Yes, this is the kind of history where you won't find sword fights or palace intrigue. It's mostly about boiling lentils, rearranging firewood, and occasionally swatting flies with a certain ecclesiastical flair. And no, you probably wouldn't survive medieval village life unless you had very strong calves and an unusually high tolerance for smoky rooms. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I always love seeing where this quiet little corner of history reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sun is setting gently across the peaks. You've arrived just in time to see the last streaks of golden light spill over the ridges and pool at the edges of terraced fields. The landscape feels alive in a slow, steady kind of way, oxen turning back toward the barns, women hoisting water jars on their hips, the earth itself breathing out warmth from the day. You walk along a narrow path edged with tufts of barley and purple lupines. It twists between garden plots and dry stone walls. The soil under your feet is soft from a recent rain. You can still smell it, something like rust and roots and crushed grass. Two boys pass you, carrying a wooden yoke between them, its ends strung with freshly filled jugs. They glance your way, offer a half smile, and continue on. In the distance, the mountains loom in blues and deepening purples. The Simeon Range is no backdrop here. It's a participant, folding in close, whispering wind through tall eucalyptus, and casting long shadows across the fields. You can hear the faint echo of a goat bleating, answered moments later by the creak of a distant cart. Medieval Ethiopian villages like this one often sat atop high plateaus, perched for safety and for the gift of cool breezes. The air thins a little as you breathe it in, clean and bright, touched with wood smoke and the scent of baking flatbread. This highland geography shaped everything: the pace of agriculture, the rhythm of walking, even the shape of homes, which huddled close together to share warmth when the night got sharp. You round a bend in the path and come to a low wall of loosely stacked stone. It cradles a small yard where chickens peck between scattered seed husks. A woman in a white natalist shawl pauses to scatter another handful of grain. She hums a tune you don't know, bright and winding, and nods politely before returning to her task. In this moment, the entire village seems to be winding down. It's that peaceful hush just before evening truly settles, the hour when everyone is still outside, but quieter. Even the animals have caught the mood. A donkey snorts softly. A tethered sheep coughs once and gives up on being interesting. You hear laughter, low, gentle, and look uphill to where three children are drawing shapes in the dust with sticks. They aren't in a rush. No one seems to be. Time here is elastic. It bends to match the light, the chores, the unspoken agreements of habit and need. No clocks, just the sun's retreat and the knowledge that supper should be started before shadows reach the house door. Historians still argue whether most of these villages functioned communally or by strict family plots. The records from this period, often compiled by priests or traveling scribes, paint an incomplete picture. Some claim intricate systems of shared land stewardship. Others suggest strong hierarchies, with the oldest male holding sway over tools and trade decisions. But here, tonight, it simply looks like everyone knows what to do without needing to be told. You follow the path a little farther and find yourself by a water trough, carved from a hollowed log and fed by a thin bamboo shoot. The stream's trickle is slow and steady, like it's trying not to disturb the frogs hiding beneath the stone lip. You sit there for a moment and let the cool air press gently against your skin. Somewhere behind you, a cow shifts her weight, making the leather bell around her neck tap once against her collarbone. Just across the fields is the outline of the village proper. About a dozen round tukuls, those traditional conical roofed houses, cluster like mushrooms around a central space. Their walls are made from stone and mud plaster, warm brown and laced with straw. The roofs are thick with thatch, often topped with a pot or cross to ward off spirits. Many of the homes here share a single-style circular walls, a central fire pit, and mats of woven grass lining the interior edge. You pause before entering the village, watching as two elders lower themselves onto small stools under a tree. One of them wears a faded blue tunic and holds prayer beads that click softly as his thumb brushes each one. They speak slowly, mostly with their hands, and occasionally burst into a quiet chuckle. From the look of things, they've probably told the same 3 jokes since the reign of King Lalibela, and they're still working. The sky above is now a gradient of saffron and rose. It casts a glow on everything, on goats, on thatch, on a woven basket balanced on a woman's head. This is a village that doesn't try to dazzle. It doesn't shout its importance, but it holds something quieter, a long, rooted sense of place, a rhythm not disturbed by wars or trade routes or treaties, just daily life, lived close to the earth and closer still to the sky. You step into the village proper just as the shadows begin to reach the tukul doorways. The houses seem to grow out of the ground, low walls of stone packed with earth and straw, topped with steeply pitched thatched roofs that ripple in the evening breeze. One roof even has a small clay jar balanced at its peak, painted with ochre swirls, like the house is wearing a quiet little hat. The doorways are low, most barely shoulder height, so everyone naturally ducks before entering. That's less a defensive feature and more a side effect of insulation strategy. Smaller openings mean cooler interiors in the heat, warmer in the chill. But if you're tall and forgetful, you're definitely bonking your head at least once. You trail your fingers along one of the walls as you pass. It's rough and sun-warmed, the scent of dust and dry grass caught in its crevices. Some homes have outer walls coated in red clay, polished to a soft sheen. Others are decorated with simple geometric patterns, lines, triangles, suns, all applied with fingers or tied bundles of grass. The designs aren't purely ornamental, as they carry meaning, protection, prosperity, family lineage, or just a particularly stylish aunt with strong opinions about exterior aesthetics. A dog ambles by, tail swaying like a broom made of rope. He sniffs your sandals, decides you're not a threat or snack, and lumbers off from a nearby doorway. A girl peeks out with a bright yellow scarf knotted around her curls. She doesn't say anything, just watches you pass. Her hands are busy braiding something, maybe grass for a basket, maybe hair for a doll. It's hard to tell in the fading light. The houses here don't face outward. They turn in toward the center, like a family gathered around a hearth. This shared space is more than a clearing. It's the heartbeat of the village, a wide circle of trampled earth scattered with a few wooden stools, some fire pits, and an overturned gourd that a cat is currently using as a throne. Historians still debate how standardized this architectural style truly was across medieval Ethiopian regions. While some records from Aksumite ruins and early Solomonic texts suggest consistent structural patterns, others imply that topography, clan preferences, and resource availability created significant variations. What seems consistent, however, is the intimacy of the layout, villages designed for talk, for neighborly glances, for the easy exchange of help. You pause beside a tukul with smoke curling out of a low vent in the roof. The scent is sweet, part wood, part herb, maybe eucalyptus or dried sagebrush. There's the faint sound of a baby gurgling somewhere inside. Outside the door, a pair of sandals rest carefully side by side, their leather soft from long use. It feels like a gesture, an unspoken "we're home," but not far. Near the center of the village is a house slightly larger than the rest, though not ostentatious. Its base stones are better cut, more evenly stacked. The thatch is bound tighter, neater. A few clay jars sit outside, arranged with care, some sealed, others left open, maybe to catch the night air. This is likely the home of someone important, maybe the village elder, maybe a respected priest, maybe just the only one who remembers to do repairs before the rainy season. You don't knock, people rarely do here, but you stand by the doorway until a soft voice invites you in. Inside, it's dim, but not dark. Light comes from a low fire in the center, ringed by stones and crowned with a wide clay meted. The flat cooking surface used to make injera. Sparks occasionally leap upward like tiny, ambitious fireflies. Smoke drifts slowly up toward a gap in the thatch, pooling first in the upper air like a ceiling of mist. Despite the haze, the room feels clean, purposeful. The walls are curved, giving the space a soft, held feeling. On low shelves carved directly into the mud plaster, you see bundles of dried herbs, clay cups, and wooden spoons smoothed by years of stirring. There's a narrow woven mat laid along the wall for sitting, and a gourd hanging from a leather strap, used, depending on the moment, for milk, honey, or storytelling. The woman tending the fire turns slightly, and you see the bright glint of a brass earring flash in the firelight. She's flipping injera with the smooth confidence of someone who's done it 1,000 times. Her hand slides beneath the edge, lifts the soft bread, and lays it in a basket lined with cloth. Another batter sizzle, another spiral of bubbles rising. She doesn't pause her work to greet you. Instead, she gestures gently to the mat and says, "It's warm here," and it is, not just in temperature, but in feeling. This house is full of quiet rituals, A child sleeps in the corner, wrapped in a cotton shawl. The fire pops. Someone outside laughs softly, and across from you, an old man with silver streaks in his beard sips from a carved cup. He offers it your way without a word. It's Tage honey wine, thick and golden, sharp and sweet at once. You take a sip. It hums on the tongue like something ancient and confident. Later, the woman sets down the basket of injera and ladles out a scoop of thick stew, lentils, tomato, onion, berbere. The flavors are layered spicy, earthy, and comforting. It's not just food, it's time slowed down and served warm. You glance at the others. No one's talking much, just the occasional comment, the scrape of bread against bowl, the sigh of satisfaction. Eating here isn't rushed. It's not a task to complete. It's something shared, honored, soot absorbed. And here's your quirky little tidbit of the evening in many traditional Ethiopian homes. The mitad, the circular griddle where injera is cooked, is not only the literal center of the home, but sometimes believed to symbolically represent the sun. Some rural communities even align the house's doorway with the sunrise, creating a metaphoric cycle of life, light, and nourishment every day. That symbolism doesn't feel like a metaphor tonight. With fire in the middle, people ringed close, and bread steaming gently between them. This house feels like its own quiet solar system. And so, you lean back against the curved wall, warm and full, the flavors lingering on your tongue. Outside, the sky has gone navy blue, and stars are just starting to flicker between the clouds. After supper, the fire is stoked not for cooking, but for comfort. A few embers are nudged into a small clay brazier near the wall, and the rest are left to fade naturally. The woman who had been cooking now sits cross-legged on a reed mat, her hands busy shaping small balls of incense resin. She mixes frankincense with dried leaves from a shrub whose name you don't catch, but whose sharp, peppery aroma you certainly feel in your sinuses. She presses a small lump onto the glowing coals. Smoke spirals up immediately, curling like soft thread through the dim air. It's not heavy or suffocating, just enough to scent the room and tease out memories. The old man leans forward, eyes half-lidded, as though he's already drifting through the past. The child in the corner snores softly now, head tucked against a bundle of linen. You're invited to stay a while, and of course you do. There's a rhythm in this household that slows you. The fire crackles gently. A pot clinks faintly. No one's in a rush to say anything. Then, the woman picks up a shallow wooden bowl and begins mixing flour with water, almost absent-mindedly, as though she's preparing something for tomorrow without needing to check which day it is. You glance around the home, taking in the tiny domestic details. A string of red chili peppers dangles near the window slit, drying in the cool air. A gourd ladle hangs beside the doorway, worn smooth at the lip from long use. A folded goat hide cushion leans in the corner, clearly favored by someone's back during long storytelling nights. Everything has a function. Everything is familiar. There's no clutter, no decoration for its own sake. Yet the room breathes with a quiet beauty that design magazines would weep over. And here comes your scholarly debate of the night. Historians still argue whether injera, this iconic flatbread, was as central to the medieval diet as it is today. Some archaeological digs in northern Ethiopia suggest grain processing for fermented batters existed centuries earlier, while others claim teff wasn't widely cultivated in the highlands until the late medieval period. Either way, the sour, spongy warmth now filling your belly feels timeless, regardless of what dusty scrolls or pollen samples say. Just then, you hear another soft pop from the fire, followed by the unmistakable scent of roasted coffee beans. Ah, coffee. The beans had been drying on a flat tray outside earlier, and now they're being stirred carefully in a shallow iron pan. The woman hums as she moves the pan in slow circles, coaxing the oils out of the tiny green seeds until they darken and shine. A mortar and pestle sit waiting. Soon, the beans will be crushed by hand, brewed with water and a touch of spice, and poured from a curved neck jabina pot into small, handleless cups. But not yet. That's for later. For now. The woman speaks, her voice low, rhythmic, like a lullaby for adults. She begins to tell you about last Timcat, the great Epiphany celebration that marks the baptism of Jesus, even though it happened months ago. Her story places you there immediately. You see the white robes shimmering against a dawn sky as villagers lined up to walk to the river. The priests carried tablets, sacred replicas of the Ark of the Covenant, hidden beneath velvet cloths. Women ululated, men clapped, children darted like sparrows between legs and hems. You can almost feel the dew on your toes as she speaks. The river was cold that morning, she says, but no one cared. The water was a blessing, washing away what didn't need to follow them into the new year. And when the tablets returned to the church, held high and veiled in incense and song, everyone danced, even the elders, especially the elders, as she describes it. You notice how the room itself leans in, not literally, of course, but the way the fire shifts, the way the old man nods with his eyes closed, the way her voice lowers for reverence and lifts for laughter. You're pulled into the memory with a softness that requires no disbelief, only stillness. A fringe fact slips into your mind here. Did you know some regions in Ethiopia used to craft tablet carriers with secret compartments for herbs, meant to protect the priest from spirits during long festival processions? It's not widely agreed upon. Some scholars argue it's apocryphal or based on confusion with shamanistic traditions, while others swear it was a common local practice in certain highland parishes. Either way, it adds a little spice to the incense. Doesn't it? The woman's story winds down with a quiet smile. She dips her fingers in a small bowl of water, sprinkles a few drops onto the coals, and watches as the steam curls upward like a blessing. No fanfare, just the kind of silence that follows something well told. Now the old man speaks. His voice is gravelly but deliberate. He doesn't tell a story exactly, more a memory threaded with commentary and eyebrow-raising innuendo. It's about a cow that went missing the week before Timcat, and how it wandered into the priest's herb garden. The punchline, which arrives several minutes later and with perfect timing, involves the cow eating something sacred and mooing through a liturgy. You don't entirely understand the Jay's phrase he uses, but the woman snorts into her cup, and that's good enough for you. By now, the coffee is ready. The woman pours from the jabina with a slow, practiced hand, lifting it high so the stream of dark liquid arcs gently into the waiting cups. She hands you one. It's hot, fragrant with cloves and a trace of ginger. You hold it in both hands, feeling its warmth seep into your skin. No sugar, no milk, just pure, roasted strength grown on nearby hills, harvested by hands you might have passed on the road into this village. And here's something to sip with your sip. The very word coffee likely stems from Kaffa, a province not far from here, though historians still debate the precise location of the first brew. Some say monks used it to stay awake during long chants. Others believe it was discovered by goat herders who noticed their animals getting jittery after munching red berries. Either way, tonight you're drinking history, smooth and quietly revolutionary. You finish your cup slowly. Outside, the wind has picked up, brushing the walls with dry grass and the occasional flap of fabric. The fire is lower now, mostly embers. The child has turned in their sleep. The old man begins to hum, tuneless but comforting. You stretch your legs, lean back against the wall again, and feel the weight of evening settle deeper. There's nothing urgent, nothing loud, just the quiet company of a hearth, a story, and a cup of the world's favorite bean. You step back into the cooling night, blinking gently as your eyes adjust to the moonlight. The sky is deeper now, an indigo stretch pricked with stars that don't twinkle so much as hang, steady and present. The air has shifted. It's no longer scented with smoke and spice, but with night-blooming herbs and the faint sweetness of distant acacia trees. The village has quieted further. No voices rise above a murmur, but there's movement still, small, essential movements that mark the final tasks of the day. You follow the sound of soft splashing and the occasional scrape of a wooden spoon against clay. In one open courtyard, a trio of women tends to the evening pots. They move in slow coordination, like a dance no one choreographed, but everyone remembers. One stirs a thick, bubbling paste. Another pours water from a leather flask into a shallow basin. The third squats beside a pile of firewood, selecting twigs and shaking off the dust like she's sorting stories by length and weight. You don't interrupt. Instead, you stand quietly just at the edge of the circle and take it in. The pot over the fire holds shiro, a stew made from ground legumes and Berber spice. Its scent wraps around you like a shawl, even though dinner was hours ago. Your stomach gives a polite nudge, wondering if there's room for more. But this isn't about hunger anymore. It's about process, about finishing the day's labors with care. The women talk quietly as they work, but their words are less about information and more about music. You can't catch all the meanings, but the rhythm is unmistakable. One story passed, one question asked, one joke shared, all folded seamlessly into the ladling, the wiping, the tending, and while they stir pots and pour water, children, barefoot and quick, flit through the shadows with armfuls of firewood or baskets of split straw. No one calls instructions. No one raises a voice. Everyone knows where they're meant to be, like beads on a well-worn string. It's tempting to romanticize this. But let's be real. Chores are chores. Washing dishes with river water isn't glamorous. Scrubbing pots with sand and ash isn't an aesthetic. But there's something undeniably graceful about how it's done here. No grumbling, no rush, just practiced motions, and the kind of attention the modern kitchens rarely bother with anymore. Somewhere across the way, a chicken lets out a squawk of protest. A nearby goat clearly not impressed. Bleats once and returns to chewing something it probably shouldn't. You hear laughter, soft, like someone remembering a funny moment too late to share. A girl, maybe 10, maybe 12, walks past carrying a bundle of dried herbs on her head. She hums as she goes, a melody that doesn't seem to have a beginning or end, just notes strung together by habit. You follow her briefly and find yourself beside a low stone bench outside one of the larger homes. It's not grand, but it has a sense of openness. A basket of grain half sifted, a drying rack full of thin green beans, and two old stools that look like they've held 100 conversations. You sit on one, and the stone beneath your feet is warm from the day's heat. The woman beside you, older, with silver threaded through her braids, nods but doesn't speak right away. She threads some flax fibers through her fingers, twisting them slowly, almost lazily, into cord. Tomorrow is washing day, she says eventually, not in complaint, just fact. She nods toward a wide clay jar, and you can just make out the outline of laundry soaking in water and bitter leaves. It's not glamorous, it's labor. But again, there's that unhurried dignity to it. Everything done when it's meant to be done. No app reminders, no timers buzzing. Here's your history fact for the moment in medieval Ethiopian villages, especially in the highlands. Gender roles around chores were loosely defined but surprisingly adaptable, while women traditionally handled food and domestic duties. Evidence from travelers' accounts and ecclesiastical records suggests that in times of planting, illness, or pilgrimage, everyone pitched in wherever needed. Flexibility wasn't a political statement, it was survival. The older woman lets out a sigh, not tired, just reflective, and begins to speak. She tells you about the river during dry season, about how the rocks sing when you walk barefoot across them, about the time her brother tried to carry 3 water jugs at once and dropped one right on his foot, earning a week of limping and a permanent nickname, about how the best gossip is always found near the laundry stones. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some villagers claim that if you whisper a secret to a steaming pot before dawn, it'll never be repeated. Whether this originated as folklore, a parenting trick, or a clever way to encourage kids not to eavesdrop, no one's quite sure, but in this village, the pots are still treated with a certain reverence at sunrise. The woman pauses and offers you a sliver of roasted barley wrapped in a leaf. It's dry, a little bitter, but surprisingly satisfying. She doesn't say much more, just keeps twisting the flax into rope, letting the evening fill the spaces between her words. In the distance, a drum beats once, not loud, just enough to remind you that there's music waiting somewhere, probably near the churchyard or one of the younger households. You don't rush toward it, not yet. There's a rhythm here, and you're only just learning to match it. Instead, you sit, you listen to the scrape of spoon on clay, the crunch of straw underfoot, the whisper of flax fibers pulled tight, and slowly, like ink dropped into water. The night deepens around you as the stars settle deeper into the sky. You drift toward the center of the village again, drawn by soft laughter and the scent of cooling earth. Somewhere nearby, a dog yawns, then curls into a tight, satisfied ball. A rooster, thoroughly confused by the moonlight, crows once, realizes its mistake, and goes quiet. At the edge of the courtyard, an elder sits cross-legged on a wooden stool beneath a woven canopy. The flickering light from a clay lantern paints delicate shadows across his face. His shawl, embroidered with fading crosses and gently frayed edges, glows faintly in the firelight. He nods once at you, like he's been expecting you, not for conversation, necessarily, but for company. And then, without preamble, he begins to tell a story. It's a memory, he says, from the last Timcat celebration. He speaks slowly, letting each word settle. You can almost see it unfold again. The sky barely lit, the dew fresh on the grass, the villagers walking barefoot toward the river in long, white processions. Every shoulder bore a cotton shawl, every head faced forward, except, of course, for the children, who kept turning around to wave at each other or chase shadows between the feet of the crowd. He describes the water, cold and dark, rippling under the breath of dawn. The priests arrived carrying the tablets, sacred replicas of the ark, hidden under jewel-colored cloths. The drums echoed slowly, like heartbeats, and when the moment came, when the water was blessed and the sun crested the hills, everyone rushed forward, old knees bent, young arms splashed, shawls flew into the air. It wasn't chaotic, the elder insists. It was joy with purpose. Water flew everywhere, and so did laughter. And here's your historical anchor, Timcat, the Ethiopian Orthodox celebration of Epiphany, has been documented as far back as the 14th century, though its origins are likely older. It's one of the few religious festivals that merges solemn ritual with open, ecstatic communal participation. The presence of tablets, symbolizing the Ark of the Covenant, is central, and the celebration often spans several days, featuring nighttime prayers, daytime processions, and ritual immersions that commemorate Christ's baptism. The elder chuckles softly as he tells of the boy who, too eager to reach the river, tripped on his own robe and rolled downhill, laughing all the way, or the goat that somehow ended up baptized with the crowd and wandered back home, slightly holier than before, as he talks. Others gather. A few women sit nearby, their hands busy with small bits of weaving or husking lentils. One adjusts her shawl, another tosses a bundle of straw into the fire. The circle expands gently, no invitation needed, no announcement made, just a slow gravitational pull toward warmth and memory. You sit quietly, watching flames dance across their faces. The story pauses and resumes, expands and contracts, as others chime in with details, corrections, or favorite parts. It's less about accuracy and more about belonging. This isn't a lecture, it's a shared remembering. And right here's your scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether Timkat in the medieval period was practiced uniformly across Ethiopia, or if it varied widely between highland and lowland communities. Some suggest the elaborate river immersions were exclusive to royal courts and major ecclesiastical centers, while others believe even remote villages like this one had full, joyous participation. The oral histories seem to side with the latter. Someone produces a hand drum from beneath a shawl. Its surface is tight and warm, slightly smudged from long use. A rhythm begins, soft and steady, more heartbeat than song. A few feet tap along. A smile passes between two elders, like a wink wrapped in time. And here's a quirky little bonus. Some villagers believe that if you can still feel water in your ears 2 days after Timkat, It means the angels personally blessed your soul. It's the kind of theology that doesn't make it into scrolls, but lingers lovingly in grandmother's warnings and children's games. The fire pops. A boy giggles in his sleep somewhere nearby. A woman, perhaps 30, maybe younger, begins to hum a slow tune. Her voice is gentle, untrained, but full of feeling. The melody drifts through the courtyard like mist. It's not a hymn, it's not a lullaby. It's something in between, something about riverbanks and footsteps and stars falling into water. You close your eyes for a moment, and the air shifts. You're not sure if it's the song, the stories, or just the way night settles its weight on the shoulders of a village. But you feel it, like you belong here, just for now. When you open your eyes again, the elder has gone quiet. He's leaning back, eyes half closed, the faintest smile on his lips. One of the women begins folding a shawl into a tight, tidy bundle. Another pulls her hair into a knot and ties it with a strip of indigo-dyed cloth. And just as you think the evening is ending, someone, perhaps from another household, tosses a small branch onto the fire. It flares briefly, illuminating every face in a warm, amber glow. Then, like a sigh, the flames dim again. You stand slowly, brush the dust from your robe. Yes, somehow it's your robe now, and nod gently toward the group. No one says goodbye. Goodbyes aren't really a thing here. You just drift away when it's time, and apparently, it's time. As you walk across the courtyard, you hear the low beat of the drum resume. The elder's voice murmurs something about the moon and a lost slipper. Another story is beginning. But you don't need to hear this one. You already know how it ends, with a smile, with a shawl, with another quiet night in a village that remembers its water. You leave the fading laughter behind and follow a path that leads toward a quieter part of the village, just beyond a sloping garden of lentils and tall maize stalks. The trail is lined with smooth stones, some of which wobble slightly underfoot. It curves gently uphill toward the highest point in the settlement. The elevation isn't much, but it feels like stepping into another layer of stillness. At the crest of the path, you see it a small, round chapel, modest in size but unmistakably sacred. Its stone walls are rubbed smooth by weather and prayer. The thatched roof forms a perfect cone, capped with a wooden cross bound in copper wire. Vines creep along its base, their leaves trembling slightly in the wind. A pair of sandals sits at the threshold, well worn, carefully aligned. Inside, it is quiet. A hush so complete it feels woven into the walls. The air smells of smoke, old incense, and leather bindings. It's not dark, exactly. Faint light filters through narrow slits in the walls, creating ribbons that sway with drifting ash and dust. You pause at the doorway, unsure whether to step in. Then you hear it, the soft rasp of parchment and the creak of wood. A priest sits at a low table. His robes are a faded cream, edged with red. His head is slightly bowed, shoulders still, hands slowly moving across a goatskin page with a narrow stylus. He doesn't look up, but his voice floats toward you, gentle and amused. You can come in. Just don't step on the dog. You glance down. Sure enough, a speckled village dog, grizzled and unconcerned, sleeps curled near the priest's foot. You step carefully over its tail and settle onto a mat near the wall. The priest continues working, the stylus making the softest of sounds. The page he's copying is covered in Ge'ez script, ancient, angular, perfectly spaced. You try not to stare, but it's mesmerizing. The ink is dark, almost purple, made from soot and resin and iron salts. Each letter is shaped with care, like it matters deeply how every curve lands. He finally pauses and stretches his fingers. "You're lucky," he says, not looking up. "This is a quiet night. No funerals, no disputes over fence lines, no arguments about whose goat trespassed into whose garden. You smile. Is that common?" He nods, amused. "Goats are great theologians. They believe all fences are imaginary." He leans back and finally meets your gaze. His eyes are dark, clear, and gently tired. He's not old, not yet, but carries the soft gravity of someone who listens more than he speaks. And here's a bit of grounded context in medieval Ethiopian villages. Orthodox priests often served as much more than religious leaders. They were teachers, healers, record keepers, and sometimes judges. Their literacy gave them status, and their proximity to holy relics gave them reverence. They were also craftsmen, copyists of scripture, guardians of oral history, and conservators of parchment that could take weeks to produce and years to perfect. The priest picks up a small pot of ink and swirls it thoughtfully. "This is from our own smoke," he says, "the wood ash from the feast of Saint Tekla Haymanot. It makes the darkest lines." He gestures to a shelf filled with other manuscripts. Some are rolled in cloth, others are bound with string and stacked. None look untouched. This is a working library, not a museum. Then, without invitation, he begins to recite. It's not loud, it's not performative, just a quiet, steady flow of words in Ge'ez. You don't understand them, not fully, but the rhythm settles over you like a blanket. The phrases rise and fall in waves. You hear echoes of psalms, fragments of parables, pauses where even the parchment seems to breathe. Here's your fringe tidbit. Some medieval Ethiopian scribes were believed to breathe onto each page before beginning to write, a ritual meant to ask divine guidance for the words to come. Whether this originated from monastic orders or local mysticism is still debated, but the act remains a favorite detail among scholars of liturgical writing. As he finishes the verse, the priest closes the parchment and sets a small stone on top to keep it flat. "I'll finish that one tomorrow," he says. "Words need rest, too." He pours you a cup of tala, fermented barley beer, slightly sour, mildly fizzy. "This isn't holy," he says with a smile, "but it helps me think." You take a sip. It's earthy and unexpected, like the first rain on dry leaves. Outside, a breeze presses gently against the chapel walls. One of the narrow windows glows silver from moonlight. Inside, the silence stretches again, not empty but full of breath and books and the smell of ink drying on animal skin. And here's your debate for the night historians still argue whether these village chapels were built with architectural input from Aksumite builders or developed independently over time. The curved corners, the central fire pit, the use of wood and volcanic stone all resemble features from earlier royal complexes. But scholars disagree on whether these were deliberate emulations or organic continuations. The priest stands, stretches, and pulls a folded cloth over the shelf of manuscripts. "That's enough for now," he says. "If the saints want to speak further, they'll wait for morning." He walks you to the doorway and points out a narrow path lit faintly by the moon. That will take you to the weavers. If you hear them singing, they're still working. If not, they're dreaming. You nod your thanks, step outside, and feel the night wrap around you again. The chapel behind you seems smaller now, but warmer somehow. A tiny ember of wisdom burning gently on the hilltop, not to be rushed, not to be questioned, just quietly glowing. You follow the narrow moonlit path, the soft crunch of soil beneath your steps steadying your breath. The stars above are crowding in now, fierce and countless, as if the sky itself is trying to impress the mountain. There's no haze here, no smoke, no lantern glow to drown them, just the vast sprawl of midnight, and a faint rustle of wind through maize leaves. Downhill, the village flattens out again, and you catch a flicker of movement beneath a canopy stretched between two tukuls. A loom, long, narrow, rhythmic. A weaver leans into it, pulling threads taut, guiding them through the warp with the careful touch of someone who knows exactly how strong each fiber is and exactly how fragile. The weaver doesn't pause as you approach. She's seated cross-legged, the loom propped between her feet and a row of stones. A strip of cloth unfurls before her, pale against the darkness, the beginnings of a pattern just starting to emerge, zigzags in red, flanked by narrow black borders. You sit quietly at the edge of her circle. There's no need for introductions. The shuttle clicks forward. The thread draws tight. The pattern continues. She speaks after a few minutes, not looking up. White is for peace, she says, voice soft but firm. Red is for power, and black keeps them apart. The cloth stretches farther now. Indigo threads join the others. Blue is water, she adds, or tears. Depends who's asking. And here's your historical fact, traditional Ethiopian weaving, especially among the Amhara and Tigray communities, dates back centuries. Men typically operated the large vertical looms, while women handled the spinning and dyeing. But in more remote or insular villages like this one, those divisions blurred. Whoever had the hands, the time, and the patience wove what needed weaving. The weaver shifts slightly, rolling her neck. Her fingers move with practiced grace. Pinch, pull, press, repeat. The cloth grows slowly, like a story finding its shape. She tells you, between throws of the shuttle, that each family has its own way of tying threads, its own tension, its own rhythm. I can spot my uncle's weaving by feel alone, she says. Too tight on the corners. He always tried to control the pattern. You smile, and you don't. She shrugs. I let it wander a little. Life isn't symmetrical. You glance around and see other looms nearby, covered for the night, some finished, some half complete. A few hang from tree branches, drying in the night air. Their patterns shimmer faintly, stripes, diamonds, echoes of old songs frozen in thread. And here's your fringe tidbit in some medieval Ethiopian villages, especially near Lake Tana. Weavers buried their first finished cloth in the ground overnight, believing the soil would bless it with patience. The practice wasn't universal, and scholars argue whether it was symbolic or superstitious, but even now, some elders will pat the earth when unrolling new cloth. Just in case. The weaver pauses to sip from a clay cup by her side. She offers it to you. Inside is a mixture of boiled leaves and herbs, slightly bitter, meant to clear the head. Too much weaving, she says. And your dreams start following patterns too. You take a sip. It's sharp, earthy, and oddly grounding. Now she lifts a small bundle of dyed thread and holds it to the moonlight. It glows faintly, a deep, stubborn red. This comes from crushed madder roots, she says. Takes weeks to soak, but it lasts for generations. And here's your scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether medieval Ethiopian dyers used only local plants or also imported exotic dyes via Red Sea trade routes. Some fabrics from ancient burial sites show chemical traces of indigofera and safflower not native to the region, but others argue that long-distance dye trade would have been too costly for small villages. Still, stories persist of wandering merchants arriving with pouches of impossible colors and leaving behind rumors of oceans the villagers would never see. The weaver wraps up her work for the night. She knots the thread with a practiced flick, smooths the cloth, and folds it into a neat rectangle. This one's for a wedding, she murmurs. Not mine. She stretches her arms overhead, bones popping gently. Then she picks up a second piece of cloth, older, worn soft with use, and drapes it around her shoulders. It's patterned with simple chevrons and a faded sunburst at the edge. My mother made this one, she says. It still smells like eucalyptus sometimes. You rise with her. She walks with you to the edge of her workspace and points toward a narrow trail leading to the outer grove. If you follow that path, you'll find the beehives, she says. Don't get too close. They're watching. You thank her, and she smiles, just briefly, just enough. As you walk away, you glance back once. She's seated again, not at the loom this time, but beside a pile of dyed threads, sorting them, untangling the colors, perhaps choosing the next story she'll spin into cloth, or perhaps just enjoying the hush between one pattern and the next. You follow the narrow path behind the weaver's canopy, its surface softened by fallen leaves and the occasional thread of spider silk. It curves through a small grove of inset plants, tall, broad-leaved, almost surreal in the moonlight. Their trunks shine pale like standing stones, and their heavy leaves rustle just enough to sound like whispered arguments between old trees. Then you smell it, the earthy sweetness of honey, layered with the faint tang of smoke. It floats in the air before you hear a single buzz, before you see a single wing. The hives appear gradually, almost like secrets. They're suspended in trees, woven from long strips of bamboo and covered in mud. Some are horizontal, like fat sleeping logs. Others dangle like fruit, lashed high into the branches with ropes made of dried grass. You'd never notice them if you weren't looking, but once your eyes adjust, you see them everywhere. 20, maybe 30 hives, tucked above head height, like the forest's private treasures. A man stands beneath the largest sycamore, holding a bundle of smoldering branches. He waves it gently, wafting a slow ribbon of smoke upward toward a hive. He doesn't look alarmed or rushed or even especially cautious, just calm, unshakably calm. He sees you but says nothing at first. He waits until the smoke rises in soft spirals and the hive's entrance grows still. Then he nods. They're sleepy now. His voice is gravel warm, weathered. He wears a long tunic, stained with ash and something sticky. A woven pouch hangs at his hip, the flap curled with age. His fingers are thick, but precise, like the branches he works with have taught him the importance of small movements. He lifts the hive from its cradle of rope and tilts it just enough to catch the honey in a shallow clay bowl. The golden liquid oozes slowly, sticky and reluctant. The scent grows stronger, deep, almost floral, with the richness of sun-drenched flowers and mossy bark. One bee buzzes close to your ear, unimpressed by your presence, then veers away into the trees. And here's your historical grounding. Beekeeping in medieval Ethiopia was not just a household task, it was a sacred one. Honey was used for food, of course, but also for medicine, for preserving fruit, for sealing wounds, for rituals, and most notably for making teji. The honey wine served at weddings, funerals, and nearly every rite of passage in between. Bees were seen as gifts, not tools. You didn't own them, you negotiated with them. The man hands you a flat disk of honeycomb. It's still warm from the hive. You bite into it, and the wax yields instantly, spilling sweet gold across your tongue. There's a crunch, a chew, a soft burst of something ancient and edible. He nods again, satisfied. He squats beside the fire, stirring the coals gently with a twig. A second bundle of sticks smolders nearby, just enough to keep the bees drowsy but not harmed. You can't force them, he says. You ask nicely, like a guest. He leans back against the tree and starts to talk. Not loud, not linear, just small, half-formed sentences that paint a picture. He tells you about a swarm that once followed his uncle for 2 days, hovering like a crown, about a queen bee that built her hive inside a church roof beam, and how no one dared remove it, even when wax dripped onto the altar. About the time lightning struck a hive, and the honey it produced after that was darker, thicker, like it had swallowed the storm. And here's your fringe tidbit in some regions of Ethiopia. There's an old belief that bees can recognize good people. If a hive swarms near you, you're blessed. If it stings you, you've got something to atone for. The man doesn't confirm or deny this, but he chuckles when you bring it up. They're picky, he says, but not judgmental. He opens his pouch and shows you a small talisman, wooden, shaped like a bee, painted with soot and honey. I carved this when I was 10, he says. It's not magic, just respectful. You hear a quiet rustle in the bushes behind you. A goat, of course. It blinks at the two of you, chews a bit of leaf, then wanders off like it had somewhere more important to be. The man watches it go, shakes his head. Goats never say thank you. He stands, brushing ash from his tunic. Want to see something, he asks. And of course, you do. He leads you to a smaller tree, thin, bent slightly, and points to a tiny hive barely larger than a melon. This one is new, he whispers. The bees came 2 nights ago. They liked the tree's song. You tilt your head. He smiles. Everything sings if you know when to listen. And here's your scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether medieval Ethiopian beekeeping involved deliberate hive construction or whether villagers simply harvested from wild nests opportunistically. Some point to clay beehive remnants found near 14th century settlements as evidence of long-standing apiculture, while others argue these may have been repurposed storage vessels. The woven hives used here still defy classification. They're part tool, part offering. The man replaces the hive gently, securing it with a twisted loop of rope. The smoke has thinned now. The bees stir slightly but don't leave. There's peace in the way he moves, an understanding between hands and wings. Before you leave, he hands you a small gourd. For later, he says, a little honey helps dreams stick. You thank him. He doesn't answer, but he nods once and turns back to his hives. As you walk away, the trees close behind you. The air is thick with the hum of 1,000 tiny wings, each one singing its own quiet truth. And somewhere, under a branch you didn't notice before, another hive waits for morning. The forest narrows behind you, and the buzzing fades into memory, replaced by the soft crunch of dry grass underfoot. You're back on the outer edge of the village now, where fields stretch beyond the last line of homes and the stone footpaths give way to trails barely wider than goat tracks. The wind here carries hints of turned earth and barley husks, an end-of-day perfume of labor and dust. A small boy appears ahead, crouched beside a stone pillar, leaning at a slant in the middle of a clearing. The pillar is old, so old that moss has claimed most of it, and vines curl at its base like sleepy cats. He's using a twig to trace something on its face, squinting at a faded carving that might be an animal, or a person, or maybe just the weather's opinion on stone. He glances up at you. It used to talk. He says simply. You smile. What did it say? He shrugs. Depends who's listening. This pillar, this stele, stands among several others, all varying in height and lean. Some are upright, others tilt as if eavesdropping. None are marked clearly enough to declare their purpose. A nearby woman, sitting with a basket of split peas, nods at you as if to say, yes, they're real. Yes, we still wonder. And here's your mainstream historical moment. Ethiopia is one of the few sub-Saharan regions to develop an indigenous tradition of inscribed stone monuments, particularly around the Aksumite Empire and its surrounding territories. These stelae ranged from royal obelisks to small memorials, often marking victories, treaties, or spiritual events. In villages like this one, though, oral traditions fill in where inscriptions fade. The stones remain, even when the meanings shift. You sit beside the boy, and he offers you his twig. You take it, hesitating, then use it to gently trace a swirl near the base. It might be a sun or a snake. He nods approvingly either way. A man walks past with a hoe slung over one shoulder. He pauses at another stele, rests his hand on it for a moment, then moves on. No words, just acknowledgement. The woman by the basket speaks now. Some say this one marks where a warrior fell, she says, gesturing to the tallest stele. Others say it's where twins were born on the same breath. You glance at her. And what do you believe? She smiles. I believe it's good to have stories in stone. They don't walk away. She sets aside her peas and stands. The beads on her wrist jingle faintly. Want to see something strange? She asks. You do? Of course you do. She leads you a few paces away to a smaller stele, barely waist high, half swallowed by grass. It leans sharply, as if whispering to the earth. Carved into its face is something you almost recognize. 3 looping lines, one broken, one complete, and one etched deeper than the others. Some say it's a map, she says. Others think it's just a mistake. And here's your quirky fringe note in some Ethiopian villages, especially those near trade routes. Stele carvings were believed to be coded messages, directions, warnings, or even blessings. Few can be read today. Some resemble ancient Ge'ez, others don't match any known script. Whether they were practical or spiritual, no one can say for sure, but villagers still leave offerings at their base: a flower, a pebble, a curl of thread. The woman kneels and places a single lentil beside the stele. You don't ask why. It feels right. A breeze lifts the hem of her shawl and scatters a few peas from her basket. She doesn't chase them. The field will take them. She murmurs, "Better here than forgotten," as you stand to leave. The boy is still drawing at the first pillar, now humming to himself. His tune is uneven, curious, a song made of stones and guesses. You walk past another line of stele. One has a cross etched deep into its surface, clearer than the rest. You pause. Run your fingers over it. The grooves are worn smooth, like they've been touched by many hands before yours. It feels warm. It probably isn't, but it feels that way. And here's your scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether stelae like these were remnants of pre-Christian traditions reabsorbed into Ethiopian Orthodox symbolism, or whether they were purely ecclesiastical markers from the start. Some claim syncretic use, where ancient burial markers were quietly rebranded as holy ground. Others insist the overlap is a coincidence, born from continuity of stonecraft rather than belief. Either way, the stones are here. They lean, they wait, and people still sit beside them. As you continue on, the village returns in fragments: rooftops, flickers of torchlight, the distant clatter of a pestle against a grinding stone. But something about this corner stays with you, a space where memory isn't stored in mines or manuscripts, but in granite, quiet, steady, slow to forget. The path curves gently downhill now, following the outline of a terraced field where lentils and barley grow in neat, low rows. You can see the last glimmer of firelight in the village beginning to dim, replaced by the quiet hush of breath, wind, and the occasional whisper of cloth being folded for the night. Your steps lead you toward a courtyard where three women are seated beneath a low awning, arranging platters of food, but there's no meat, no lavish spread. Instead, you see lentils, split peas, slow-cooked greens, and strips of injera stacked like soft scrolls. One woman sprinkles a pinch of salt in a circular pattern around a bowl of red stew, then nods with satisfaction. She looks up. "It's almost fasting day," she says, "so we eat as if it's already here." And here's your historical anchor for this section. Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity observes an extensive liturgical calendar, including weekly fasting on Wednesdays and Fridays, as well as long fasting periods such as Lent Hudade and the Fast of the Prophets. During these times, meat, dairy, and eggs are avoided. This shaped not only religious observance, but also everyday cooking, encouraging a deep culinary creativity with legumes, vegetables, and spiced oils. The woman gestures for you to sit. You do, cross-legged on a goatskin mat, your knees brushing a low basket filled with warm injera. One of the women offers you a shallow bowl, lentils flavored with berbere, garlic, and just enough oil to carry the spice. Another passes you a torn piece of bread, folded like an envelope of goodwill. There's no formal blessing, just the quiet grace of hunger meeting generosity. You eat slowly, aware of how deeply satisfying this is, not just the food itself, but the way it's shared. There's no talk of recipes, no commentaries on spice level, just nods, the occasional mm, and the soft click of fingers pressing injera into stew. And here's your quirky detail in many Ethiopian households, including medieval ones. It's considered a gesture of affection to feed someone else by hand, called gursha. One of the women leans toward her friend, scoops a small bite of lentils, and gently places it in her mouth with a grin. They laugh, not because it's unusual, but because it's familiar. Old friends, old rituals, still playful. You notice, too, that no one uses utensils. Hands are the only tools here. Careful, graceful hands. Food isn't just nourishment, it's a texture, a rhythm, an offering, and it carries with it the silent awareness of cycles, of fasting and feasting, of patience and reward. Behind you, someone stirs a pot one final time. You hear the lid settle into place with a hollow click. A gourd is hung on a nail. A shawl is draped across a bench. The courtyard narrows, not with walls, but with the dimming of action. One woman yawns and pulls her scarf over her head. Another rises and carries the basket of bread indoors. You're left with the third, an elder, her braids coiled neatly beneath a faded shawl. She's not in a hurry. Her fingers tap absently against her bowl. You see, she says softly, there's no such thing as an empty table here, only one's waiting for someone to come. She tells you that even during the hardest seasons, during droughts or travel or fasting, food is always made with someone in mind. Sometimes that someone is a guest, sometimes it's the saints, sometimes it's just hope. And here's your scholarly wrinkle historians still argue whether fasting in medieval Ethiopian villages was practiced with strict uniformity or adapted locally, especially in remote settlements. Some ecclesiastical records suggest absolute adherence to national doctrine, while others hint at more flexible observances depending on rainfall, harvest conditions, and local leadership. What's clear is that food, when shared, always carried spiritual weight. The elder offers you one last piece of injera. You take it, fold it into a tidy triangle, and dip it gently into the edge of the bowl. It's the last bite, and it tastes like nightfall, spiced, soft, settling. She nods. Tomorrow is quiet, but the kitchen still breathes. She stands slowly, collecting her bowl, and pats your shoulder with fingers that still smell faintly of garlic and ash. You watch her go, her shadow stretching like a cloak across the yard. Alone now, you sit back on your mat and close your eyes for a moment. Your belly is warm, your limbs are heavy. In the distance, a dog barks once, a short, conversational woof. Then nothing more. The moon has climbed high above the courtyard wall, casting long shadows across the stone. You hear the flap of a shutter closing, the whisper of a pot being stacked with care. The village is nearly asleep. Nearly, but not entirely, because as you listen more closely, you can still hear the faint rustle of leaves near the market road, the creak of a wooden door, the soft clink of a cup being placed. Upside down for tomorrow's first coffee. The fast is coming, but tonight is still full. The path winds away from the courtyard and veers toward the village edge, where the night stretches a little wider and the air feels lighter, as though it's already beginning to let go of its own weight. You pass a sleeping donkey tied loosely to a stake, its ears twitching in response to a dream you'll never be allowed to hear. A chicken flutters briefly on a rooftop before resettling with a huff. Ahead, The landscape opens into a wide, dusty square, faintly traced with wagon ruts and scattered with woven mats weighted down by stones. No people now, just the ghost of morning bustle waiting in the silence. This is where the market lives, not always, not every day, but often enough that the ground knows the weight of it. Baskets, jars, stretched cloth. A few bundles of firewood are already in place, dropped off early by those who live farthest. Their owners will return at dawn with goats in tow, or bundles of herbs, or fat clay pots sloshing quietly with milk or tage. You settle near the edge of the square, your back against a low wall. It's cool, still holding the chill from last night. From here, you can see the whole layout, the open space, the paths leading in from every direction, like streams feeding a gentle lake. You picture it filled with people, again traders calling out prices, old women laughing over squash, a child trying very hard to barter with a stick and half a fig. And here's your historical fact. Weekly markets were a fundamental part of rural Ethiopian village life throughout the medieval period, not just for commerce, but for news, storytelling, matchmaking, and the simple act of seeing someone new. Goods ranged from grain, wool, and honey to amulets, tools, and ritual charms. There was a rhythm to it, tied more to moon phases and saints' feast days than to calendars or clocks. The market's presence feels strong even now. In its sleep, you walk slowly between the stones and flattened reeds, noting the outlines of booths long since packed away. A stack of baskets sits under a tarp, secured with a stone. Nearby, a tangle of rope rests like a forgotten puzzle waiting to be solved. At the far side, an old man sits beside a pile of clay pots, snoring faintly. His head is tucked into his shawl, his bare feet dusted with ochre. One pot sits beside him, upright and whole. The others are chipped, stacked, wrapped in thin cloth. You wonder if he ever leaves this spot, or if he simply lets the market come and go around him. You settle beside a stack of firewood tied with twine. The scent is sharp. Juniper, eucalyptus, a bit of grass still clinging to the bark. You close your eyes for a moment and let yourself imagine what this place will become. In a few hours, children darting between legs, women holding up dresses against the sun, traders arguing cheerfully about whose garlic is less dishonest. And here's your quirky tidbit in some highland villages. It was believed that the first item sold at market set the tone for the entire day. If it was something soft, like eggs or cloth, it was said to bring calm. If it was something loud, like a goat or brass, expect gossip. Traders sometimes staged their first sale accordingly, like planting the right kind of seed to grow the day. The man stirs beside his pots, murmuring something in his sleep. A hand rises, scratches his cheek, and drops again. He doesn't wake, doesn't need to. The morning will find him where it always does, from behind a low stone wall. You hear a soft clinking, someone already preparing coffee for tomorrow. Perhaps. The market is quiet, but not empty. It never really is. There's always something arranging itself beneath the stillness. And here's your scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether village markets in medieval Ethiopia functioned primarily as economic centers or as ritual and social gatherings. While trade was clearly central, many accounts from travelers and monks describe marketplaces as places where disputes were settled, songs were debuted, and romantic matches were arranged, with commerce serving more as background music than the main event. You stand, brushing dust from your knees. The moon casts faint silver across the square, lighting up a small strip of fabric snagged on a stick. It flutters slightly, like it remembers being sold, sewn, and worn. You head back toward the village, passing a row of low steps that will, come sunrise, hold elders with opinions, children with mischief, and baskets filled with more than just produce, baskets filled with stories, overheard promises, and the long threads of routine for now. Though the market sleeps, but you can already feel it dreaming as you leave the square behind. The village narrows again, the paths becoming soft underfoot, lined with tufts of dry grass and old stones shaped smooth by generations of footsteps. The houses thin out now, spaced wider apart, as if giving way to something beyond the reach of walls or fences. And there, just beyond the last tukul, you see it a narrow trail, barely visible, leading between two large boulders that lean together like gossiping elders. A young man stands at the entrance to the trail, holding a walking stick carved with faint spiral designs. He's not guarding it, just lingering, like someone who enjoys being the last thing between home and what lies beyond. He looks you over and says, "That path, it used to lead to Salt." You raise an eyebrow. "Salt caravans," he clarifies. "Mules and men. They'd pass through here before the forest grew over." He doesn't explain further. He simply points with his stick, and you follow. The trail bends sharply, hidden from the main village by tall grasses and low fig trees. It winds between small gullies, dips across a dry stream bed, and climbs again into a patch of scrubby brush. Thorns brush your ankles. Something rustles in the grass behind you, too soft to be trouble, probably just a lizard with ambitious dreams. And here's your historical anchor. Ethiopia's internal salt trade routes once stretched across vast swathes of the highlands, connecting salt-rich areas like the Danakil Depression with far-flung villages. Caravans would travel for weeks with blocks of amyli salt strapped to their pack animals, exchanging the precious resource for grain, cloth, or livestock. These routes were vital arteries of medieval commerce, and also quiet carriers of stories, gossip, and the occasional stolen song. The path levels out at a narrow ridge, overlooking terraced fields now dark in the moonlight. You spot a small wooden marker, barely taller than your shin, half buried in the dirt. Someone once tried to claim this trail, or remember it, you're not sure which. A few paces ahead, the path splits. One branch heads upward, toward the hills. The other disappears into a thicket, so dense it seems to swallow sound. A boy appears suddenly from that thicket, barefoot, holding a bundle of grass over one shoulder. He can't be more than 12. His eyes are sharp in the moonlight. "You shouldn't go past the second bend," he says matter-of-factly. You blink. Why not? He shrugs. "Hyenas. There it is. And here's your fringe detail in medieval Ethiopian folklore. Hyenas held a complicated place in village life. They were feared for obvious reasons, but also respected, even mythologized. Some stories cast them as shapeshifters or night messengers. Others warned that hearing a hyena laugh near your home meant you'd receive unexpected guests or unexpected news. It wasn't always a bad omen, but it was never ignored. The boy points toward the upper trail instead. That one's safer, he says, unless you like stories with teeth. You smile, and he vanishes just as quickly as he came, back into the thicket, the grass bundle bobbing behind him like a small parade. You take the upper path, because frankly, you're in the mood for quiet tonight. It winds through tall grass, climbing slightly, and then levels into a shelf of flat rock that overlooks the village. From here, the homes look like gentle shadows, rounded, sleeping forms beneath the moon's soft hand. You can even make out the weaver's loom, now covered, and the chapel's pale roof gleaming faintly. And here's your scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether trails like these were formal caravan routes or simply worn footpaths used by locals over generations. The lack of maps from the period makes it hard to trace. Some scholars believe these winding trails were part of seasonal trade networks, while others argue they were primarily communal lifelines used for grazing, gathering firewood, or slipping away to tell secrets without an audience. You sit down on the stone shelf, your legs stretched in front of you, arms wrapped around your knees. The wind brushes past, gentle but steady, somewhere down the slope. A twig snaps. You pause, wait. Nothing follows. Maybe it was a goat, maybe not. You reach into your satchel and pull out the gourd of honey the beekeeper gave you. It's warm now from your body heat. You uncork it and take a small sip. Thick, sweet, slightly fermented. It clings to your throat like a good memory. The stars above are sharp enough to draw blood. You name a few: the horned ox, the fish with 3 tails, the emperor's eye. You doubt those are the real names. But they're good enough for tonight. You wonder if the boy was teasing you about the hyenas, or if he really knows where they wait. Maybe he leaves gifts for them. Maybe they leave answers in return. And maybe, just maybe, they're listening right now. You finish the honey, cork the gourd, and let the quiet settle again. The village lies below, safe and wrapped in sleep. The trail lies behind, twisting and hidden. And just beyond the trees, something breathes. But it doesn't come closer. Not tonight. You descend from the ridge slowly, feet finding sure places in the dark. The stone underfoot is still warm from the day, but the wind carries the chill of midnight now, slipping around your ankles like the tails of curious cats. The trail brings you back into the village from a different angle, threading through a small grove of juniper and olive trees. Their trunks are gnarled and twisted, like they've been laughing at weather for generations. You hear it before you see it, a low hum, almost too low to notice at first. Then a breathy yip, then silence. You follow the sound toward the open space between 2 homes, where a goatskin mat has been unrolled beside a small fire, its glow flickering against a line of stones arranged like a compass rose. A woman sits there, her face turned up to the sky, her hair wrapped in a cloth dotted with white circles, constellations stitched by hand. She doesn't look surprised to see you. There's a storm of stars tonight, she says. Best to watch them before they scatter. You sit beside her on the mat. The stones around the fire crackle as the heat draws sap from them, releasing the faintest hint of pine and earth. She lifts a hand and points to a cluster of stars directly above. That one's the donkey, she says. See how it kicks its leg? You don't. Not quite, but you nod. She moves on. That's the water jug. And there, she draws a slow arc with her finger. Those are the twins. If you wait long enough, you'll see them fight. And here's your historical grounding. Traditional Ethiopian cosmology blends Orthodox Christian interpretations with older folk systems of celestial storytelling. Stars weren't just stars, they were animals, tools, people, saints, oral traditions passed down generations of sky lore, often tied to planting seasons, fast days, and community warnings. In some areas, stars were said to be the souls of those waiting to be reborn, resting in the sky until it was their turn again. The woman pours you a small cup from a clay flask. It's lightly spiced, warm to the touch, and faintly bitter. It tastes like something brewed for thoughtfulness. She sips her own and resumes her stargazing. There was a time when we used the stars to tell everything, she says. When to plant, when to wait, when to marry, when to hide. You glance sideways, and now she shrugs. Now we just watch. That's enough. She reaches into a pouch and pulls out a flat disc, a polished piece of stone etched with notches. She passes it to you. You turn it over in your hands. It's smooth on one side, marked with tiny lines on the other. A few are clustered, a few are spaced apart. You raise an eyebrow. Star map, she says simply, not for navigation, just remembering. And here's your quirky fact. Some medieval Ethiopian communities crafted star markers from wood, bone, or stone, not for scientific use, but for ritual memory. These objects helped storytellers recall seasonal myths and align their tales with specific nights. They weren't calendars, exactly, but narrative anchors, like constellations in the palm. From the field below, you hear another yip, sharper this time, closer. She doesn't flinch. Hyenas are bold when they're bored. They won't come close tonight. You believe her, mostly. The fire pops. The flames rise briefly, casting shadows that leap across the stones, across her face, across the empty spaces between stars. She tells you that when she was a child, her grandfather taught her to name every star in 1/4 of the sky. Only 1/4, she says, that way. I would always have something new to learn. She points again, this time to a cluster low on the horizon. That's the basket. It tips forward in the rainy season, always. You squint, the shape is faint, but yes, there's a pattern. There's always a pattern, if you look long enough. And here's your scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether Ethiopian star lore was heavily influenced by external sources, Arab, Egyptian, or Babylonian, or developed independently from local agricultural observation. While some constellations share names or functions with Islamic or Mediterranean systems, others appear to be wholly unique, rooted in highland pastoral life and weather cycles. You lean back on your elbows, the sky pressing gently against your eyelids. It doesn't feel empty, it feels full, full of people watching from elsewhere, full of stories waiting to be remembered, full of gentle, celestial laughter. The woman stands, brushing ash from her shawl. She places another piece of wood on the fire, then walks a few steps away and lies on her back, her hands folded beneath her head. You lie down, too. The goatskin is soft beneath you. The stars blink like old eyes, somewhere in the dark. A hyena yips again, then stops, as if it's listening too. You let your eyes close, and the donkey kicks its leg. The sky above is a velvet ocean now, deep, seamless and full of silent currents. The stars drift in place, or at least pretend to. You lie still on the goatskin mat, the fire beside you reduced to embers, pulsing quietly like a sleeping heart. The woman beside you hums a tune with no melody, just syllables that rise and fall with the rhythm of breath and thought. Eventually, she rises. No words, just a nod, a slight tightening of her shawl, and then she melts into the darkness between homes. The mat still holds her shape. The fire still carries her warmth. But the night has claimed her once more. You sit up slowly. The village lies quiet beneath the stars. But as your ears adjust, you begin to notice again the soft signs of life, the creak of a door settling into place, the scuff of sandals, the flutter of fabric drying on a line. These aren't intrusions, they're lullabies. A familiar scent wafts your way: roasted beans, cloves, a wisp of cardamom. You follow it, almost unconsciously, to a small courtyard lit by a trio of tiny coals glowing in a ceramic brazier. The flicker dances over a low stone bench, a tray with 3 cups, and a jabana, the curving black pot used to make Ethiopia's signature drink. A woman in a faded indigo shawl sits beside the fire, gently coaxing the last of the brew into the cups. She doesn't look up as you approach. You're late, she murmurs, but so is the night. She passes you a cup, small, handleless, delicate as an eggshell. The coffee is dark, fragrant, shimmering with a slight oil slick that catches the light like moonlight in a mirror. And here's your final historical anchor of the evening. The Ethiopian coffee ceremony is one of the most enduring and ritualized social customs in the country, with roots stretching back centuries. Even in the medieval period, the act of roasting, grinding, brewing, and sharing coffee was more than a caffeine delivery system. It was an offering of time, attention, and mutual presence. In many homes, 3 rounds were served: Abulhiyazatona and Baraka, each one symbolizing a deepening of conversation and connection. You sip. The first taste is strong, startling, almost, but then it softens, rounding out into something earthy and rich. There's no sugar, no milk, just coffee and memory. The woman adds a pinch of incense to the brazier. It releases a smoky swirl that loops lazily through the air, twirling over your cup and out into the night. A man joins you, his robe faded, his beard short and careful. He accepts his cup without a word and sits cross-legged on the other side of the fire. The 3 of you form a triangle, balanced and quiet. This is the tona, the second round of coffee, the one meant for reflection. And here's your fringe detail in some highland villages. It was believed that the steam from the second round of coffee could carry your thoughts to the ancestors, especially if you made a wish while sipping. Not loudly, just inwardly. The steam would do the rest. Tonight, it curls upward with surprising grace, disappearing into a sky already full of old listeners. You sip again, slower this time. The fire snaps softly. The silence isn't empty. It's shared. After a while, the woman pours the final round. Baraka, the blessing cup. The man offers a proverb, not directly to you, but into the space between you. A road is not long if you walk with stories. The woman answers without looking up, and not dark if you walk with fire. You smile into your cup. The coffee is lighter now, both in color and strength, but somehow sweeter. not in flavor, in feeling. Here's your scholarly debate to carry into dreams. Historians still argue whether medieval Ethiopian coffee rituals evolved from household habits or religious rites. Some believe the earliest ceremonies were tied to Sufi gatherings or Christian night vigils, using the drink to stay alert during long prayers. Others point to its roots in hospitality traditions, passed through generations as quiet gestures of welcome. Either way, the cup became more than liquid, so it became language. The fire has dimmed now to a dull red bed of coals. The man stands, offers a polite nod, and disappears into the dark. The woman gathers the cups and rinses them with a splash from a clay jug. She stacks them, wraps them in cloth, and says, "Tomorrow, I'll start the fire again. You'll smell it. You step out of the courtyard, the final warmth of coffee still in your chest. The sky is beginning to pale at its edges. Not sunrise, not yet, but the whisper that it's coming. The breeze has shifted. Somewhere, a rooster clears its throat and decides it's not quite time. And all around, the village rests, blanketed in the hush of sleep, steeped in stories, cradled by stars. You walk slowly now, back toward the center, toward the last stretch of this long, gentle evening and the first stretch of rest. The village is asleep now, well and truly. No more voices, no more footfalls, only the quiet breathing of homes and trees and earth. You wander without urgency, retracing the loop of this long evening as if you might find more tucked between the silences. But what remains now are echoes, warm, hushed, and low. You pass by the weaver's loom, now shrouded in a cloth that sways faintly in the breeze, like a ghost dancing in its sleep. The chapel sits in its moonlit solitude, the cross on its roof pointing the way to somewhere that doesn't need a name. The courtyard where you ate lentils is empty, the ashes from the cook fire scattered like sand. And then, finally, you find yourself near the edge of the village once more, where a wide mat has been laid out under an acacia tree. It's not a bed, not really, but it waits like one. You sink onto it without thinking, your bones settling deeper than your skin. A folded shawl lies beside it. You pull it over yourself, and it smells faintly of eucalyptus, wood smoke, and sleep. Above, the stars are softening. The darkest ones have begun to dim, fading gently, as if they know their time is nearly done. The horizon shows no color yet, but the shape of it has changed. It curves differently, breathes differently. You lie there with your hands resting on your stomach, your feet uncovered, your face tilted toward the edge of the sky. In the distance, you hear a soft, rhythmic tapping, a woman pounding grain for tomorrow's breakfast. She is the first to rise. And here's your final historical note in medieval Ethiopian villages. Mornings often began in the grain house, where women used large mortars to prepare flour for injera or gruel. The sound of the pestle, its steady, padded knock, was a kind of village alarm, though no one ever rushed to meet it. The day began not with shouting or bells, but with rhythm, the same rhythm that had been ending your night. Somewhere nearby, a goat shuffles in its pen, a baby sighs in its sleep. The wind shifts and carries with it the smell of ashes, barley, and dew. You close your eyes and see it all again, the high stone homes, the circle of elders, the star map traced in ash, the bees, the fire, the coffee, the boy warning you of hyenas, the girl with a yellow scarf and quiet braids. And here's your final quirky detail. Some villagers believe that if you dream about walking through your own village while asleep in your village, the ancestors are whispering something to you, not instructions, just reminders. Let your breath slow. Let the night curl around you like the shawl from the weaver's basket, soft, worn, and full of color, even in the dark. The stars above you, once sharp and lively, have mellowed into a calm, diffused sky. You don't need to name them anymore. You've met enough of them already. The mat beneath you holds the shape of your body now, its woven fibers warming to your presence. Around you, the village stirs only in dreams. No footsteps, no questions, no duties. The bees are asleep in their hives. The market baskets sit undisturbed beneath their cloths. The chapel pages are closed. And somewhere, maybe beyond the trees, even the hyenas have curled into their dens. You take one last breath of the highland air, clean, silent, and laced with the faintest note of spice and ash. Let it settle deep into your chest. You don't need to hold on to it. Just let it pass through you like a story shared at dusk, tonight. Nothing is demanded of you. No questions, no tasks. You've walked the paths, tasted the bread, listened to the fire, and followed the stars. Now, all that's left is sleep, the kind of sleep that doesn't ask for answers, the kind that carries honey in its throat and footprints in its dreams, the kind you've earned. So close your eyes and let the village keep watch a while.